Hi. Last week yesterday we saw the Lechlecha. I just want to continue on the same thing because there are a lot of stories in the Old Testament that we miss, and especially as a Gentile Christianity, we don't focus much on the stories of the Old Testament, but we miss a lot of them. There are a lot of fascinating and amazing stories in that one, which will give us a more intimacy and also more um, the understanding of the mightiness and the power and strength of our God to whom we serve. Because we miss a lot of them. Usually what we do is we just take one verse in the New Testament, exaggerate it and expose it big and then fabricate it and stay there and then do some emotional speeches, and move on. But actually there are a lot of exciting things inside the Old Testament that we want to talk. We were talking about Abraham and Sarah. How many days did Sarah and Abraham stayed inside Egypt? It was not a one-day business. It was not a one-night show. They went in, the custom checked, and then the Pharaoh got in, and then he took her to the palace, and then he sent them back with all the gifts. It never happened like that. It cannot. The Rashis, the sages of Jewish scholars, what they say is at least minimum 3 months they might have stayed from there, even though Egypt and Israel is only 3 days of distance to walk or to go through a mule or a donkey or a horse, but it is only, they stayed at least a 3 months time period in the place. So how they did it and what happened and how long, what they did in this 3 months time period. You see Abraham was also get a lot of gifts, and we saw the camels, mule, donkeys, and servants, and he was enjoying it. And it seems that he doesn't care about what happened to Sarah. He was enjoying his gift or something. If it is me and we wouldn't do that one. We will be fighting for our relations, our beloved ones. But Abraham doesn't seem like that. So what happened and how they stayed and what was the story behind these things? We can also refer these things when during the time period of Mordecai and Esther was also not interested in going to the palace. But she was forced into the palace, and Mordecai was forcing into her to go. But she was chosen as one of the queen of the Ahasuerus, Persian king. But she was refusing to go. The same way, Sarah was also not interested to go in the palace. But the King Pharaoh absorbed her to the palace. One time, if you see in if you see in the Joseph period, when Judah and Benjamin and all his Joseph brothers were, coming and going to Israel, and then, Canaan when the Canaan was in famine, and they were going to Egypt, and Joseph was playing all the tricks and putting the coins inside gold, coins inside and catching them back and putting them in prison, and, keeping Simeon back and sending all the other brothers. There was a lot of stories were going on there, a lot of dramas were going on there, until the Benjamin comes into the picture. The youngest brother, until he comes into the picture, Joseph was not showing his face to them. There was some mediator between them, because in those days in the royal palace, nobody can just go and meet the king just like that, especially unless if you are a relation or to the family, king's family. Otherwise, you can never ever able to see the royal people. So the same thing, it tells a lot of things. Even Jude comes and fights with him sometimes. He says that, hey, Joseph, if you are going to keep, you kept the Benjamin, my brother over here, and you sent us with him back again to bring our father. But remember that, by doing all these things, you will be getting punished like my forefathers when they were here in this land. The Pharaoh got all the plague on him. So probably you will also may have a skin disease. Beware of that one. So one of the stories talk about this one. Jude was warning Joseph. So the same thing happens over here. How Jude and other people knew that Sarah was here and their grandmother was here and granddad was here in Egypt, because Abraham, when they went inside the Egypt, I told you guys yesterday, they never had a plan of meeting the Pharaoh. Their plan was just to go inside the Egypt, settle there for some time, and then just get out. That was a plan. But the total plan changes because God's plan was totally different. The total plan changes. Pharaoh was informed, and right away she was taken, and then she was put into the beauty pageant section. Usually the royal kings, they don't choose their women just like that. Probably they may run a beauty pageant or something, and they'll pick a one, and then they'll prepare the girl for their wedding. Because before possessing any woman, he made the laws. Egyptian made the laws that before possessing somebody as a wife or something, they have to make sure that she is freed from so many things and she's not married, and and they have to offer a certain amount of money and things to brother or the father. But having said all these things, the king himself cannot cross the limits. He cannot cross that law. So bottom line is what happened. Even though she was brought in there, she was kept in a big palace. She was actually, Pharaoh gave her a big palace. Pharaoh gave her gold, silver, and all the other properties for her. Even she was given a big, huge area, a domain to live in. So Sarah was, she came from a famine land. She was suffering, not even having a food, to eat. All of a sudden, Sarah, inside the king's palace now, she has given a big place to live. She has given all the wealth to be living, because they were preparing her for the royal princess, royal kingdom, and a king's wife. So, and also, not saying anything about Abraham. Abraham was given a better position. He was offered governor general of an area or something. He was a chief minister of some place. So he was also given a palace, and he was given, because otherwise, where would he keep all these animals, donkeys, mules, and servants? Where he will keep all this? He would have kept all these things. There is no way Abraham would have kept unless if he had a place on his own. So it is understood that bottom line, he was given a position and he kept everything in that place. The same way Mordecai was given a ministerial position just because of Esther. Like Sarah, it is a routine thing that those days it happens. So Abraham was also given a place, and he was ruling a big, huge place, and Sarah was also with him, and he was in the he was offered a palace, and so this is the place where they lived. The place where they lived was called Goshen. Goshen was a place where Abraham and Sarah were settled. This is the same thing Jude and Jacob was arguing with when they entered into the Egypt land. They argued that my grandmother came in. We have the documents. We have everything, because these are the places of my grandmother and grandfather. This is the place of, we want to inherit back. So when people, or Israelites, or the Jewish people, when they went into Egypt, they all settled in the land called Goshen, where already it was inherited by their grandmother Sarah and the grandfather Abraham. Guys, God is an amazing, amazing, awesome God. He made covenant with Abraham that he will take the generation 430 years. There will be slavery in Egypt, a land where these forefathers were there. So before this generation goes in there, God sends Abraham and Sarah to prepare a place for them. Isn't it amazing work of God, folks? Isn't it amazing thing that God is moving? See, God is a God who does things in a miraculous way. Abraham didn't plan that to meet King Pharaoh, but God had a plan, because he wanted to keep his words. He wanted to keep his promises. There's a fantastic, amazing. It is only 4 in Genesis chapter 12, verses from 14 to 20, it talks only about 6 verses in the Old Testament Bible. We may not be seeing it, we might not, just like that, we might have left it like that. But the real fact is, the matter of fact is, that we must learn what we learned, the fantastic story. God, our God, is a God of keeping our promises. It is an amazing, because I'm just, condensing it into just a 10 minutes or 15 minutes presentation. But actually, it's a big, huge story if we start telling about how this Abraham, went inside there and how Sarah got it. The same way, at the last day, when the final day, every preparation was done, and the last minute and the last day, and she was taken into the palace to meet the king. When she met the king on that night, that was a night Sarah told king that she was the wife of Abraham. Right at that minute. And before that already, God was striking Egyptian people, in the palace people, with all the skin diseases and all the other issues been stricken already there. So king was surprisingly taken into this one, and he tells them to evacuate, or he evicted them basically from the country right away, because he was been plagued by God just because keeping Sarah. See how God is guiding them, protecting them, bringing them out of this place where they're not supposed to be. Not only he brought them just like that, but they came out with all the wealth and all the properties for. It was not easy. Just if Sarah and Abraham would have been there, stayed there for some time and come back, just like that. But God's plan was totally something different. Folks, I'm telling, our God is a fantastic God. Our God is a mighty, mighty, mighty and powerful God you could never imagine. Because we don't look into deeper way in the Old Testament Bibles. That's why we are not understanding the power and the mighty of our God. We are taking this in a very granted way. We're still thinking that, God is going to give us all the wealth and health just like that. It's only a prosperity. Everybody thinks that, we want to move further. We want to be, get a higher position than what we're living. Our living standard should be going high. This is what the Christianity is basically running on. All is about the blessing ministry. Oh, you will get something if you're praying. You will get this one if you're going. This is about people who are teaching all the time, which is absolutely wrong, folks. If you see the heroes of the Bible, even God himself, he left all the heavenly treasures and he came just like an ordinary person. Everybody did the same thing. Abraham was a big businessman. Abraham was having a big royal family, and he left everything and he came to a famine land. It is always from rich to poor when you take a biblical logic. But in Gentile world, we are doing from a poor to a rich thing. That's what we are running behind. That we go and educate ourselves. We go and acquire all the money and wealth, properties, and oh my God, whatnot. We are doing straight opposite what the Bible teaches. We must understand, folks, because all the preachers and evangelists doing the same thing. They're encouraging people to get more wealth and more prosperity. They are telling that you will be blessed, your family will be blessed, your work will be blessed. They're consistently, they're preaching these things, but the Bible talks so differently, so differently. Luke was a physician and he left the job and he joined with Jesus. Matthew was a tax collector. He was a big guy and he left it and he went and joined it. And also Zacchaeus, we know that was Zacchaeus. So he left everything and he joined with Jesus' ministry. So what I'm saying is, it's always about leaving everything and joining with Jesus instead of, I'm a poor, I'm going to gain everything. That's not it's going to happen in Jesus' ministry. It's absolutely a wrong conception. We must go back and read all these stories to understand more power and more strength of our fantastic and amazing God. I'll come back with another Torah next time, and tomorrow I'm going to be with